Good afternoon or good morning if you're listening in the morning. This is Michael Herbert, your town manager, the host of Clocktown Chronicles. This is episode 5 of the Clocktown Chronicles. And today we have two special guests here. We have Yolanda Greaves, our current chair of the Select Board, and Economic Development and Community Outreach Director, Beth Reynolds. Welcome, you two. It's nice to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so today we are going to really do a 10-year retrospective of things that we've done here in the town and the way the town's changed over the last 10 years. And then we'll focus a little bit at the end on some of the challenges that we have coming up, and we've got some biggies. But really this program emanated out of a discussion that we had with the Select Board retreat where, recapping what we have done was part of that in terms of, looking at what we're going to do moving forward. And then I think, another part of that, again, was, okay, what are the challenges that we're facing? But, when you put everything together that we've done over the last decade collectively as a community, it really is an impressive list if you look at it from, just an accomplishment or an achievement standpoint. And I think that's going to be pretty self-evident as we go through this. But what I think is really most important, and one of the things that we're really trying to focus on and get in touch with, is the why. Why are these things important? Why did we do them? It's just so easy for us to get, and we've almost developed a culture of just, okay, achievement, get it done, move on to the next thing. But I think it's really, really important to think about where we were, like really put ourselves back to where we were 10 years ago, what the town looked like, what the town felt like, and then compare that to where we are now. And then that's going to help us gauge, I think, how we move forward and what are those things that we want to repeat, not necessarily projects, but do we want to continue this pace? What are the things we want to look at maybe doing a little bit differently? And so that's what today's program's all about. But, before we get into all of that, Yolanda, do you just want to give a little brief intro about you and who you are?
Sure. I'm Yolanda Greaves. I was just reelected in May to my 5th term on the Ashland Select Board. People may know my voice and face through WACA Around the Clock. We're into our 11th season of that show. I'm the current chair of the Ashland Select Board, and through my role as a Select Board member, I also represent Ashland at the Metro West Regional Collaborative, which is a regional organization. I'm the chair of that. I also represent at the state level at MAPC, and then I'm also currently on the board for WEMO, which is Women Elected Municipal Officials. So through my 12 years sitting on the Select Board, I've reached out and helped talk about regionalization and how we can work with other communities so that if we think we have a new idea, we can check with other communities to say, okay, do we have to start from the beginning, or are there other people who have done it, and vice versa. We've been able to take some of the things we've done here in Ashland, certainly the corner spot that Beth helped get going. Other communities have looked to us and asked about that. So,
good segue into Beth. Beth, how about you?
So I am Beth Reynolds. I am the Director of Economic Development and Community Outreach. I've been here for 8 years now. I've been an Ashland resident, though, for almost 20, which is nice to say. And I have enjoyed creating this position for the town of Ashland. When we had originally used the consultant to design to look at what was needed in town. I was happy to fill that position and sort of made it what Ashland really needed, filled the gap with communications, really connected the residents to the business community. And then it's just sort of evolved from there. So it's been fun bringing new events into town, bridging that gap with the residents to bring them out to meet us, to connect with one another, engage. So it's been an adventure for sure. And I'm looking forward to what's next.
Hey, everybody, if you're listening, please turn off your cell phones. I will do that too. Beth and Yolanda, thank you. Yeah, when I was thinking about this show, I thought, I was trying to think of who the best people to have as guests to be a part of this, and you two came to mind for a number of different reasons, but I think you both bring, unique perspectives and historical perspectives, both as, town officials, but then also as residents. And, just getting into, I think, some of those things, those projects, right? Obviously, they're the big ones that you think about. So, let's just start with the building projects, the two main building projects. I think when we get into this, we'll realize there's more building projects than just, the two that I'm talking about, which is the Mendez School and the public safety building. Mm-hmm. So, now I think, again, we know why they were necessary. I think that case was made for many years, and in the public safety building case for decades. But why do you think we were able to do those now? Again, it's something that we've identified for many years as a need and something that needed to be done. But what do you think was the critical mass that got us to the point where we actually did it?
Well, it's interesting because you're saying we've done two building projects, and I think back when I was on school committee and we actually in town had 4 projects going on. So I think this time when we did those 4 projects, and that was in the late 90s, 2000s, we did town hall, we did the library, we did the community center, and then we built the new high school, mm-hmm. which is now probably 15 or 17 years old. And I think we were able to do these 2 projects together because we brought together various groups in the community. We brought those people who had kids in the schools, and we brought the seniors, and we brought general public together to say, look, these are 2 projects that are necessary. And even though at first we didn't want to do them both at the same time, but funding hit and things happened that it said we need to keep moving these forward. Yeah. And even though we had to do the vote during COVID, it was either do the vote or with the Mendez School potentially lose funding from right. the MSBA. They weren't saying, oh, you can hold off with COVID. So I think the right groups of people and the right leadership was there to say, okay, both of these projects are necessary. One is not more important than the other. So we had to move them both forward at the same time.
Yeah.
I think the funding was the trigger for sure. I mean, obviously, we didn't want to pass up an opportunity to have funding to
for
help
Mendez.
Right, exactly, yeah. To have that project move forward. But I think that it's been, what I've just experienced over the last 8 years is the community really coming together. Every year, it just seems to get a little bit stronger. We're having a lot of new residents come into town. Just look at our home prices, right? Those have skyrocketed. So I feel like we have a really strong engagement, and I think that that's really what put those 2 projects forward, because they knew the importance of both of them. And I think it doesn't matter if they had young school-aged kids in the schools at that time. The older generation, right? They
were right there supporting it.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think it was important for everyone for so many reasons. And I think because people are more engaged and more just have a sense of togetherness, I think they were more, more inclined to say yes and vote for those projects through.
Yeah, I thought what was most telling, and I think something that we could all be proud of, is the fact that it wasn't a close vote. Even at the ballot,
no.
It was almost 90% in favor for each of them.
Right.
And
it's a testament to
exactly.
the community.
And I think that's, you had people who had kids in the schools and, whose focus was obviously the school, also knew the importance of the public safety building and vice versa. So, again, and those projects are built, and, we're still doing some stuff with Mendez, but
let's not also forget the opportunity that they left behind in their absence. So, just
right.
what we're doing with the fire station downtown and what it meant for DPW too. That's great, right? There's so many
fields,
positives. Yeah.
Right? We had some fields up and back of Mendez, but they weren't very good.
Right.
So now we're going to wind up with 2 very solid fields for our youth sports and our school sports. So
right.
Yeah, they opened up opportunities. The excitement for people as to the new business coming in to the fire station downtown is amazing.
Yeah, and so, that's probably a good segue to talk about some more specific economic development work, or we could go in a couple of different directions. We could talk about downtown, we could talk about economic development, but, I think economic development, think one of the hallmarks, and really kind of our philosophy has been, how can we help create an environment both from a financial perspective with incentives and then also with increased communication and Beth, your role kind of, being that liaison to, get businesses to want to come here. And at the same time, use those opportunities to fill some of these vacant and dilapidated spaces that detract from the community. And, Beth, I think probably the one that comes to mind the most is Mozzie, now which is going to be Chase, at the old Blockbuster building, which just stood as a lone testament to decline and decay on 126 for many, many years. And now it's a completely revitalized space. But to do that, we used, an economic development incentive program, which was very, very unique. And why don't you talk a little bit about some of the businesses that we've helped and some of those spaces we've been able to revitalize?
Sure. I think that incentive program that we put together has been one of the best gifts that we could have done for the business community and these new businesses coming in. So Mozzie is a great example. The Blockbuster building was vacant for 10 years plus, I think.
And longer, but yeah.
And they invested $1 million, and we were able to supply them with $40,000 in grant money and $45,000, I think, in grant funding. So they were a great example of a wonderful business that came to town. Chase, although they're not utilizing the incentive program, will hopefully be a wonderful community partner as well. Tomorrow's is another really good example. The old Papagino's that was in town. It wasn't vacant as long.
Yeah, but it was vacant for a while.
It was a couple years. And Tomorrow's is they are just booming with business. They're doing such a great job. They really have a quality product. They did such a good job in there. And again, they utilized the incentive program, and that was it was a attraction for them. People are looking around, when these businesses are looking around at other communities, this sort of just gives Ashland the edge, because it's not only just the money that they feel, it's also the welcoming feel that they get from us. They are walking into a community that wants them here, that will embrace them, and that will support them. Dulce de Leche is another one. He has created such a wonderful space at 200 Homer Ave. And their business is really picking up now too, which is wonderful to see. So, and I know we have a lot more coming up. I just had an economic development advisory group meeting today with 3 business incentive applications.
Oh, wow, that's great.
One for a child psychiatrist, like how wonderful the need is out there, and her application proves that. So we really are.
Let me know if you get an adult
that
one.
Edge.
So,
It does give us that little extra incentive to really make people feel welcome.
And what I really like is that, one, we're bringing these businesses in, because for many years, that's what we've heard from the residents, right? We don't just want to be a bedroom community. We want to have more businesses in town. We want to have places that we can walk to or go to or support. And we're seeing that happen. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, 21 Main Street is the building and then Bagel Table.
Right.
I think they came in before the incentive program potentially.
Yes.
But they have then done different partnerships with the town to foster their business and help support downtown. I mean, it's a great space. It also has some meeting space and other things that are going on in that building, as well as other buildings in downtown and throughout the community.
Right.
Yeah, and for those people, we're talking about the incentive program. So what is that? That is, so in 2013, Ashland passed the local option meals tax, which brought in some money into the town. And one of the reasons we did that was specifically for economic development, and at the time specifically for 126, which we'll get into. But subsequently, we had a town meeting vote, and we had to get a special legislative vote to earmark those funds specifically for economic development. And then after that, we had to go to the legislature and town meeting to create this incentive program, which, like you said, gives grants to private businesses incentivizes them to come here. So municipalities aren't allowed to give grants or money to private enterprises. We had to jump through hoops, and people really, really like it. But, you mentioned Dulce de Leche, and the Economic Development Incentive Program has been used for that, and then also for Zeta fencing, if I remember correctly.
Sub-Zero, nitrogen ice cream.
Well, yeah, but I'm thinking specifically about the
to
telecom.
home.
So describe to me, I mean, those of you that, both of you have been in town for a while. So prior to, 10 years ago, what was the telecom building? When you thought of the telecom building, what did you think of?
Empty space. What's really funny is back in the mid to late 80s, my husband would do lighting installations for theater. And apparently there was a theater in that building. I mean, by the time we came into town in 1990, I think it was gone, or we don't know for sure what happened with it. But it had a gym, it had some manufacturing, it didn't look very good, and there was not a lot of businesses in it, or if they were, they weren't publicized. You didn't know what was in there.
Right, they weren't businesses that you went in to visit. On
Right.
Process was in there, and they took up the largest amount of space. That was a call center. So when they left, that's when the opportunity came.
Yeah.
So whenever there's turnover, there's
Right, that's
opportunity.
exactly.
And unfortunately, we did have to lose On Process, but it did open up some wonderful space
Yeah.
for Clocktown pickleball, and now that it's becoming a little hub over there for
Dr.
sure.
Green's, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you think
You
about
go
where
there
that
for
space was. Yeah.
Yeah.
You think about that space 10 years ago and what's happened over the last decade, and let's give credit also to the ownership there,
Yes.
Steve, and
Yes.
I think a couple other partners were part of that. I mean, they really helped revitalize that. So it's, like you said, it's become kind of a new economic center for town.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and I think, there's so much more the Economic Development Incentive Program has helped. You talked about Sub-Zero, but then think about the other, Bagel Table was before that time, but that's a great new business. Was Crossroads, did they take advantage
Yes,
of that?
Crossroads
Yes, they
Physical
did.
Therapy. That was a huge
That was a huge win.
win for
Yeah.
us. Have you visited them?
Just a few times.
Yeah.
But no, and they would be the first to say that's what really they were deciding between two places, and that's what put them over the edge to choose Ashland.
Right.
So it definitely helps.
Right.
And they've been a great business.
great
Blush has been
partner.
taking care of, has taken advantage of the sign and facade improvement. That I'd like to encourage. Erica's has used the sign and facade improvement
Right, oh yeah,
program.
so there's been quite
So-
a few. So again, thinking back over the years, like, before, 2010 or whatever, what new businesses were coming into downtown? I hear about the ones that we've lost, like, Mahitables, I believe, was one, and the Basket Case, I think, was another.
Basket Case was
But
there
what-
for
Long
a
ago.
while,
But what
that was a
businesses?
while.
Yeah, what businesses
I
came
think
in?
up until 10 years ago, there weren't new businesses coming into downtown. There was, maybe in the Mill Building, there was some businesses coming in and out. I don't remember when Uppercuts
Oh, that
came
was later.
exactly.
Yeah, that was later.
But that was longer than 10 years ago.
Uppercuts came in probably 2018, I think.
No.
Yeah.
Really? I thought they were there
Yeah.
before then.
Ashland
Okay.
Reiki and Wellness, they took over in the space in the Masons building.
Okay, so
But I
before
don't
then was the
know,
Red
yeah.
Dress. So
Right.
Red Dress was
Lisa,
a new business.
yeah, Lisa
Oh,
Price.
Lisa
right.
Price. And she came in, it was empty, and she came in, and it was a great store, and it just didn't work out, unfortunately. I don't exactly know what happened, but that was a loss when she left. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the Reiki store is a very nice store, and that's great that they're there, but, yeah, I don't,
People would like to go in and shop, and
Yeah.
they like the experience of retail shops. And
Yeah.
I mean, right now we just have no availability
Right.
in our downtown.
So, I mean, I think what's been great is watching some of these new businesses come in and seeing kind of the camaraderie that's been formed
definitely.
amongst them. And, we looked at a bid, business improvement district a few years ago.
Right.
And it wasn't the right time for a number of different reasons. And, I'm not suggesting we start up that conversation now, but I think the engagement in the discussion about that project would be very, very different. But, we're talking about downtown businesses, and let's just talk about what we've done, in downtown, period.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously we've got, these businesses coming into some new spaces, 21 Main Street,
Yep.
128 Main Street. Now, like you said, Beth, with the vacancy of the police and fire station, looks like we're going to have the brewery come in.
There's signs there, so they got to be coming.
Yeah. And so I think, obviously the large downtown project that we were doing
Yes.
is something very special to me. And there's, definitely reasons for that. But, we hear about the town wanting, or townspeople, I should say, wanting to create this vibrant, walkable downtown.
Right.
And, that's one of the things that we were trying to
Oh, yeah.
accomplish with that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, I always say, for the private sector to invest money, the public sector has to make those investments
Yep.
too in the infrastructure. And I know it's not complete yet, but have you seen kind of a shift in people responding, both residents and businesses, to that project?
I think you see it a little bit. I think where I see it the most is when we have some of our events. Certainly, Farmers Market brings people to downtown, and then a lot of times they'll stay in the downtown and go to Blush or go to the Reiki store or walk over to Bagel Table or something like that. Certainly when there's events at the Corner Spot,
Right.
which has been huge for our downtown and for what you've talked about earlier, the camaraderie and bringing the community and the townspeople together. I don't know that we'll see the full recognition of downtown until the wires are gone, until it's the completed downtown and people can come and just say, wow, what a difference. Because I think there's small noticeable differences with sidewalks and some of the trees, but until the wires are gone and the poles are gone,
Yeah.
and you can stand at one end of downtown and look toward the other and not have those poles, I think that's going to be a real transformative time. And people will really start appreciating it. And then depending on what happens with some of the parcels that are being discussed,
Yeah.
will determine who comes downtown and how much.
Yeah, what do you think, Beth? I mean, when you're talking to business owners, are they...
So the business owners, they love downtown. There's
Yeah.
no doubt. People love the changes
Yeah.
that are coming.
Yeah.
I don't hear anybody really saying, I
wish you
we
hadn't done it.
Yeah.
Right. But I do feel like we need to keep moving forward, and we
Yeah.
have to encourage these developments, like on Homer Ave, the mixed-use property that is hopefully coming soon, because that will, give us more commercial
extend,
space.
yeah.
But it will also bring people to downtown.
Yes.
So they have to have a reason to come right now.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be nice if we actually had people that were already here and already supporting our businesses? I think they would definitely feel that. The business community at least would feel that.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that we need to think of when we think of downtown is, we're thinking of like Main Street and Front Street, right? And the big project there. And I'll agree with you, Yolanda. I think when the poles come down, I think that's going to be very, very transformative. I also think what's going to happen is it's going to highlight some of these private parcels that are maybe not necessarily in the best shape.
Mm-hmm.
And
They can utilize the sign and facade improvement grant.
well, what I've started to see is already, especially along Front Street, right? So a lot of those owners of the duplexes
Yes.
and everything,
Oh, yeah.
you're starting to see them making some renovations. And
Oh,
I think
yeah.
you'll start seeing that filter
They're
out.
starting to see their values rising.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Right.
But beyond, Main and Front Street, I think, there are other parts of this whole downtown vision. And one of the things that I think has been very, very critical, to the success has been the creation of the Riverwalk and especially that bridge, and then the rethinking and revitalization of Mill Pond Park.
Right.
And that is certainly part of that downtown experience now. That's what we wanted.
Right.
And we got into a long discussion at the select board meeting when we got on this about kids fishing nowadays.
Right.
Now you go into town and you see kids on their bikes with the fishing poles
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, it's very, very heartwarming because it's what I used to do when I was a kid. And for somebody like Joe who grew up here,
Right.
and Claudia who's
Right.
lived here forever, basically. Claudia, that's not a reference to your age, if you're listening. But
Yeah, but she's a transplant.
exactly.
So,
We got
her
to
husband
make
was
that
born
clear. We got to make that clear. But, that's something that they saw many, many years ago, and that stopped happening for a variety of reasons, and now you see that coming back.
Yeah.
So it's not just looking towards the future and changing things, making things completely different. In some cases, it's honoring and returning to some of our roots, if you will.
The other thing I think we have to think about, and this is something Beth brought up in a discussion, I forget where, we've had a lot of them recently, is that downtown is not just Main Street and Front Street.
Right.
Can we extend that downtown toward where the new Starbucks is and that Route 135 area near Stone Park, right? Can we make downtown be all the way over there? Because it's all really walkable. You can park at Stone Park and go do something at CVS or at Tomorrow's and then walk into downtown for something. And I think continuing the connections in regards to some of the sidewalks to get people to and from those areas are going to be critical to Beth's vision of expanding what we think of as downtown.
Yeah, I think I call that greater downtown.
There we go, greater downtown. I knew there was a word, I just couldn't remember what it was.
It's just something I made up.
It works.
But I think Stone Park is a gem, and I feel like there's a lot of opportunity there. But there are other connections that we can make.
Yeah.
The real challenge would be to connect that to 126. But
we have a vision
we're working
for
on that.
126, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The vision to connect to 126, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about this a little bit, is the Upper Charles Trail, right? I mean, I envision someone who lives on Spyglass being able to go down 126, hop on the trail, and wind their way into downtown, and then go back.
It'd be amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Can't wait.
we have some time before that'll happen, but I think, and for all the neighborhoods in between, the people who live off of Cedar Street who could hop on the trail and get to downtown or get to 126, at either end of 126 where they live, the ability to walk or access and have a safe way to get into and out of downtown without having to get into their vehicle. I mean, that's a true vision.
And I think one of the things, so you think about all of those things that you just talked about, and you think about the Upper Charles Trail.
Mm-hmm.
The one section that we've been able to complete is Trolley Brook Trail, which is a way to get from Magunko Hill and all the stuff that's happening there, which we will get to downtown and connect that to downtown. Mm-hmm. But you're right, Trolley Brook is part of a larger Upper Charles Trail network.
Yep.
But what are the lessons you think we learned from Trolley Brook Trail that we could apply moving forward?
If you build it, they will come. I mean, I know people who go and walk that section of Trolley Brook Trail, or who use that to get to the train station. So even though we don't have it all done, I think doing that shows that we have a commitment and we are interested in creating the rest of the trail. Because if you just leave it at that, yes, it's being used, but it's not going to fulfill the full vision of what it could mean to finish that trail for Ashland.
Right.
I walk that trail every day. I love it. It's my lunch break, and it's just a very nice, peaceful walk. I see kids fishing in the summer during that time, but I also see other workers in town, which is great. That's what we want. We want businesses in town that stay here, have lunch, go grab a sandwich at the bagel table, walk down the road. But I see people walking the trail during that, and they're coworkers.
Yeah.
It's very apparent every day, and they're coming from 60 Pleasant Street. So it's not like it's right around the corner, but it does lend to a really nice kind of getaway in the middle of the day and anytime really. But it is a reason to come downtown. Again, you have to give them a reason to come downtown.
Right.
And so that leads to Magunko Hill, which has drastically changed over the last 10 years. And so you think back, really, the start of that work, so for people who don't know, Magunko Hill is, if you're going towards Hopkinton on 135 and you take a right at the Dunkin' Donuts, used to be the MBTA access road, now it's known as Memorial Drive, and there's a story behind that. And it goes to the train station, right? It's about a mile-long road. But there was nothing there for decades, and zoning was passed to basically allow 1,000 units of housing to be built there in different configurations. And the first part of that was the Cirrus development, which was almost 400 units on 26 or 29 acres. And there was that was a very controversial project, even though it had been zoned and passed, it received a permit, it received another permit. But as part of that development, and gosh, we could spend a whole hour on that alone and the lessons learned. But part of that is we also got a grant, and it was a big project, was to redo the MBTA access road.
Right.
Because it wasn't up to any kind of standards.
It wasn't really a street.
It didn't have any utilities in it.
It was
so
an access, and that was it.
Yeah, there was no gas, no water, sewer. And so that was put in place as part of that development. But then it was also key to some of the other things that are happening there. And really the trigger to that, after you do the road, was the town purchasing the property, which was a very complicated transaction. Basically, the rest of the rail transit district, we worked on that for 2 years.
Yep.
And it was extremely complex. And so we bought what was known as Lot 3, which if you go down the access road, you look to the right, that's generally Lot 3. And by purchasing that triggered the donation of land to the YMCA. And then as part of that deal, we also worked out something on Lot 2, which was the left, which was scheduled for 254 condo units, instead created or allowed for 180 units of senior affordable housing done as a friendly 40B. And so we got all of that open space, which allowed us to build Trolley Brook Trail.
Right.
So it was, and we spent, I think, $4.4 million on it. Net, I think it was like $4 million after you look at what's coming back to us. But yeah, we don't have to get into all that.
But it goes to show some of the open space that we purchased to maintain it as open space as well in the last 10 years, which is another part of our discussion that we might not get to today.
I was going to say, that's its own podcast, I feel like, the amount of
we're
open
definitely going to
space
get
we've
that because I
purchased.
think it's important to talk about. But
How much open space have we purchased in the last 10 years?
Oh, I can tell you exactly. But, the YMCA, redoing that road and having those utilities there and having the land donated, that was the key. And Yolanda, remember we went to the board meeting at the Hopkinton?
I was actually outside. So I had so I'm on the board of the Hopkinton Center for the Arts, full disclosure. And we were standing outside this past Sunday. We had a meeting there. We had our board retreat because of the partnership between the Metro West Y and the Hopkinton Center for the Arts. And I was standing out there and I was speaking with some residents from Hopkinton. And we were talking about the new YMCA coming into Ashland. I said to them, I can remember coming to this building for a Metro West YMCA board meeting. Fortunately, there were some friendly faces, and helping sell the location of the new YMCA in Ashland versus Hopkinton. And the work that Michael and Steve Mitchell and I did with our conversations with the Y staff, Peter, Rick, and some of the board members, help them decide. And then, of course, the kicker was the gift, the donation of the land by the owner, Bob Gaynor, to then bring the Metro West Y, the new Hoyt family Metro West Y, to Ashland.
It was, Beth, were you on the board at the
I was on the board,
She was on the board.
10 years I was on.
It was like a secret kind of thing the Y was having. And I remember we went first, and then Hopkinton was making a pitch too for a piece of property.
I think Hopkinton went first.
No, I think they came in after us.
Okay.
I do. But it was one of those things, when you nail the presentation.
Oh, yeah.
You just we walked away from that thinking, we did a good job.
They made a good choice.
So
yes.
And so COVID put a crimp in everybody's plans, including the YMCA. But
they're moving forward now.
They're moving forward, and we're going to have them at a select board meeting.
We're looking to have them a select board meeting in October, either the first or second one. They presented to their YMCA board, because, again, full disclosure, I'm on the Metro West YMCA board as well. And we had some presentations on some new designs, and I think they have now settled on what the design is going to look like. And what's really cool is they're looking to utilize the space in a way, working with the grades that are on the property and just really using and integrating into the Trolley Brook Trail and some other things, so.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the site plan looks awesome.
Yeah.
Just the way I love it when architects and engineers and designers are able to incorporate the building, right, the built environment into the natural environment. And that was critical to the Mendez School,
Yep.
I think. So, yeah, I just love that stuff.
And to the public safety building, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, we talked a little bit about this property purchase, and I think, again, we could spend a whole hour on that, but we're not going to. Because what we did spend is over $10 million to preserve over 300 acres. And so I go back in what little spare time I have, and this is what I do for fun, Yolanda.
Oh, okay.
I go down to the vault and I look at old town meeting warrants and
Yeah.
kind of say, what was going on back then? And so prior to Warren Woods, which was 2010, I could find one property purchase, which I believe was Oak Street, which we're still paying for. But do you recall?
In many ways.
Yeah. Do you recall any other big property purchases that were done?
I mean, I've been in town since 1990. I can't think of anything big that was purchased.
I mean, I know it was like the Simpson property. And,
Simpson property.
Yeah.
I forget when that was, though.
I want to say like 07.
Okay.
Or 08 or something.
Maybe I
like
wasn't
that.
paying attention.
But was the
That's
town
possible.
back then in a good financial space to
Oh gosh,
purchase?
we'll get to that
Okay,
later.
I was
Yeah.
gonna
That's
say,
the
I don't
other
know
thing.
that was really
as a
happening because I don't
community,
remember
they
it
didn't
being
have-
strong.
We didn't have a reserve fund. I mean,
Right.
until.
We use CPA funds. Well,
I have to say that as a community, we jumped right on CPC. The minute
Right.
it was available, we said yes. We said yes to the
Yeah.
full 3%. So we
And
have
it took
been-
a couple tries, right?
I don't
yeah,
think so.
I'm almost positive because I think Dave
I
Foster was
I remember
really
sitting
big.
at one town meeting and voting it in, and it passed. And the idea was, if we did the full 3%, at that point, not many other communities in the state were doing it. So for a while, we were getting a full match. Whatever we pulled in for CPC funds, we were then getting that fully matched. I mean, and that's what allowed us to buy Warren Woods, probably the Simpson property.
Yeah, those are all
those,
CPA
those
funds.
kinds of things. Those
Yeah.
are all CPA funds.
Yeah.
So I think that the community
been
made a
huge.
good decision on that. But in regards to large purchases, I
trying
don't
to-
know that anything was added to the town forest except for the Oak Street parcel.
Yeah, I was
But-
looking. I couldn't find anything in old warrants, but it's something that we've really prioritized over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
People will focus on the development, and they'll very much overlook a lot of the open space preservation techniques and acquisitions that we've made. And it's not just acquisitions. We've used things like deed restrictions. We've tried to be
Right.
creative. But
Right.
the first one was in 2016. It was the Girl Scout property, which was 20 acres,
Yes.
which was under threat of being developed by Howard Fafford under a 40B process. And so we have that. We talked about the rail transit district and how much we were able to preserve. That's over 150 acres if you look at all of that. And then, obviously we've added to the town forest, which, full disclosure, I'm going to take your line. I bought it, and it's. I think those purchases are great.
So, and just because there might be people who I've met people who go, "Where's the town forest?" in
I know,
Ashland?"
it's like on the
It's
northern
off
side
of
of
Winter
town.
Street. It is a beautiful place to hike and walk. We have so much to thank our town forest committee. The stewards of that space do such a great job, and they take such pride in that. But yeah, go to Winter Street, and there's 2 parking lots, and go check out some of the trails.
Yeah, there's a parking lot also on Oak Street,
Yep.
which the town forest committee
Right,
has
has the rain garden
redone,
there.
and then also on Salem Inn Road and Oregon Road. But we've added the Niccolo property, which was over 35 acres, and then some property off of Lincoln Road, which was almost 10 acres. And we still have a local business owner / developer who's still, I think, a little bit upset with me about the Niccolo property because he really wanted to develop
He wanted that and developed it.
Yeah. Mike, I won't say your full name. But anyway, so that's obviously was very very, very instrumental. And then I think about, some of the smaller things, the Warren Conference Center. And part of that, and so we got 20 acres as part of the Lanterns development. Warren Conference Center itself, the town played a role in preserving that and making sure Framingham State got it. But Tri-Street, which is an often
Very
overlooked
small
one,
section. It's only a few acres, but I
about
think
10
an
acres,
important one,
yeah. And for that side of town that really didn't have much open space. But then, I throw Cadillac Paint in there, which is 3 acres, and that's a whole story in and of itself. And, just talk about how long we've wanted to do that, and then kind of putting in place the mechanisms and the actions that we needed to take to start converting that to a park. Tearing the buildings down, cleaning up the soil. There was a lot of money spent on that. I don't think I included that.
Well, and a fair amount of that was also grants to do Cadillac Paint, to take the buildings down. We had some brownfields grants and some other grants and some money from the state.
Brownfields, Representative Lewis, I think that was one of his first earmarks, I think it was.
Been such a good supporter of that park, and continues to be.
And the big one that kind of flies under the radar is we were able to negotiate with DEP to drop a $300 and something thousand lien that they had on a property from previous cleanup efforts. And so I do think, again, just preserving some of these properties, not just with acquisitions, but with deed restrictions. And I'll go back to Tri-Street because not only did we purchase Tri-Street, we've had a deed restriction on an abutting property owner who agreed to do that. And then the Valentine property.
Same kind of thing.
Exactly, with an abutting property owner, which protected 16 acres there. And so as we're talking about Tri-Street and Cadillac Paint and the 126 side of town, why don't we talk a little bit about 126?
Sure.
Man, I'm really able to segue.
Well.
This is
Very
pretty good.
nice.
It's all off the cuff. I told you it was going to work out.
Fantastic. Well done.
It's all connected.
It is.
It is.
And both of you are involved in this project, have been involved in this project. Just what do you think it means to not just like, it's good for economic development and everything. What do you think it means for the town to be able to do something that, was identified in early comprehensive plans, like in the early 80s, as something that we wanted to do? What do you think it means for the town to finally be able to kind of move those forward?
I think it shows the town that we are considering the whole town. Because one of the things we still hear sometimes is, you forget about the Route 126 side. You don't care about those communities or those developments or those neighborhoods that live over there. And as you said, this project has been working in the works for a long time. I mean, I think I was on the board for 6 months when we started talking about potentially doing the meal sales tax to help pay for the design. I remember going to meetings, many meetings about it. But I think it shows the town that we think everyone is important and that it's part of Ashland, right? Even though for a lot of people, either coming from Framingham or Holliston, they just go through that section. But I think this project is going to show that it can all be connected and it can all be, I mean, it is all important, but I think it can show that we can make these connections between all these different parts of town.
Yeah.
I also think that it's going to be, I know it's taking a long time, downtown is taking a long time, and we can only do so much with what we've got, right? With the capacity that we have. However, I do feel like 126 is going to give people, again, a reason to go there with all of these improvements. Cadillac Paint is going to be the Arboretum, the Ashland Arboretum, a great thing for people to have a reason to go to 126. And then hopefully with all of these improvements, once the traffic and the construction is over, that it's just going to attract more and more businesses that people are asking for. So they want to go shopping. They want to have their services in town. And I feel like if we build the infrastructure for that, then it will naturally come to Ashland.
If you build it, they will come.
I guess you can say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And our part isn't necessarily of saying, I want this business here and this business there.
No.
But our business is really trying to build that infrastructure to make them want to choose Ashland.
Exactly.
To make them have a home here. So That's,
And
I think that's our
there's a lot
job.
of potential on Route 126 for new businesses and for
100%.
expanded business. I mean, I think about Dairy Queen, and everyone was so upset when Dairy Queen left Route 126, 135, and you go there. But for the business, moving to 126 has allowed them to stay open year round. They have their drive-through. The traffic that you see going through there, they're open until 10 o'clock. So if you really want
Right.
ice cream at 9:30, you know where you can go, kind of thing. So to your point, Beth, I think the idea that business has shown that by moving there, they have been able to change their business model and be more successful. And I think there's a couple of other opportunities of space that will allow other businesses to do the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's been great working with the state. I'm glad
Yep.
that they prioritized it.
Yeah. Well,
We had to give them a few
little
nudges. A few nudges to
nudges.
keep it as a priority.
But, hey.
yeah. And I will say it's a good place to interject here just how important Senate President Spilka and Representative Lewis, but certainly Karen, who's been here as a resident for decades and a local elected official. I mean, she's had her hand in a lot of these, a lot of what we've been talking about. And
Well, she was there right with us when we were working to get the project on the tip to begin with.
right.
And then when we had to push to keep it in its place rather than being pushed out another year or two. I mean, it could have been another 2 years before this project had been started. And so she helped us keep it there and keep it as a priority to the state and to the federal government that the funds came through.
Absolutely. So we're going to shift a little bit. I mean, we've been talking about like the physical and natural environment, community development stuff, and there's so many other things that we could talk about. Just non-sexy stuff like, West Union sewer transmission lines and
The infrastructure that we know has to get maintained and done, but we don't talk
exactly.
about.
And then other stuff like sustainability projects. We've done
Yeah.
a lot of that stuff. And some of the smaller renovations. And, I'm not even sure we're going to get to some of the historical preservation actions we've taken, like with the Ballantyne property and the Warren Barn. But I want to shift a little bit and talk about kind of the people behind some of this stuff. And so we've got great, obviously, elected and appointed committees and volunteers. And then we've also got, really, I was about to say a new team at Town Hall, but we've been around
The best
for-
team, you mean?
It is the best team, but but we've been together for a while, and
Yeah.
we've got, we've been through a lot.
Yeah.
And so Beth, just from your perspective, just talk a little bit about the team in general, and we can talk a little bit about some specifics.
We have such a wonderful team. I think everybody works really well together.
Most of the time.
It's, well, I think, it's a true testament to leadership. I think it's shown everywhere. And I think the leadership in town engages our employees, and it helps us all want to work together. And I think that's exactly what we do. I think we work very well together. I think we've started talking more to one another. The communication is there. And it's a strong unit, and we really have the same goal. We want to make Ashland better. We're always looking at ways to improve. We're always working for ways to make residents want to come to Ashland and be happy living here. So I think we have the best team. I really do. I think we're very lucky.
Yeah, we are. We are very, very fortunate. And I think, one of the things that it's been very, very important to me, it was important to Tony, the previous town manager who had hired me. And it's important to the select board, I know, is just kind of professionalizing the staff and the environment and some of just the operations. And so now we have things like a capital improvement plan and a capital improvement process and a way of scoring that, and basically a professional approach to capital. We've got actually money that we can allocate towards capital. And then we've got, the financial policies, which, if you ask me kind of what is the backbone of all of this stuff that we're talking about, it's really been the financial policies.
Definitely.
And Yolanda, this is a good opportunity, I think, to talk about just how the relationship with the select board and town manager and finance committee and school committee and superintendent has evolved over your tenure.
Oh my gosh. So I think about that, and so I got elected to the school committee in 2002, at the same time as when we tried for the first vote for the high school. And some of the anonymity between, just tension between school committee and select board at the time, and even town management at the time. And that started slowly changing. One of the things that I had pushed for was conversation between the select board and school committee, and that started a little bit when we had John Petrin as our town manager. And as things changed and different people sat in different positions, you saw that transition happen. You saw the understanding. It wasn't just one or two people. It was more people going, okay, we're not these separate entities. We're not a school and town. It's all of us are the town, and these are just different departments. And I think with Tony coming on board, different members sitting on the select board, different members sitting on school committee, different superintendent, all those things that have changed, it's been evolving, and the conversation and the communication between the different departments has improved. And I think, as you said, with the financial policy being put in place, we were able to have that conversation as these two elected, one appointed committee that help run and think about the financial health of our community and our schools. And that has helped us move forward. I think that conversation and those working together was also what allowed us to do the school building project and the public safety building at the same time, because we were working to support each other rather than say our one project is more important than the other.
Right.
So it has been a process, but that's always what you have. It's always a process when you have when there's someone else sitting, even one new person in a committee, as we're seeing. Makita has joined, and it's just a different energy than when Rob was sitting there, or when we had Claudia step on the select board after Steve had been sitting there. And I think those changes, little changes, and again, even for you with your staff, a number of your people have been sitting there, but you've had someone like Catherine come in after you created the HR position how many years ago? So it's always, I think, as a community, we have to understand that we're always going to grow, we're always going to make some changes, and as we were sitting, we had a select board and planning board meeting, just a get-together agenda kind of thing. One of the things we all said was, we're all trying to make Ashland better. We all live here. Many of us have raised families here. Some of us, our families have come back. Mm-hmm. And we're all doing this. And even many of our employees are Ashland residents. So all of our goal is to make sure we have a community that we love, and make sure we have a community that we want our family to come back to.
That's great.
Yeah, but I'm not going to push back on that. But everybody says that. You go back to 2000, everybody was saying that.
But it wasn't the same in 2000. It was not. And I can say that because I was.
What do you think? So everybody's saying that. So what do you think is the actual change? I told you I was going to make you think.
I think some of it is the people supporting the residents, not the residents, the people who are the voters, I think, have made the change, right? When I was sitting on school committee, my focus was the schools, which is what, as a school committee member, that's what you do. As a select board member, it's the whole town. And I think it used to think that as a select board member, it was the town and not the schools. And I think now both organizations realize that we have to support each other.
Right.
So I think there's been a shift in thinking, right?
Yeah.
That we have to work together.
Yep.
I also think that COVID really brought this community together even closer.
Yep.
The way people supported each other with different programs.
Yeah.
COVID was very hard for a lot of people, but the way this community pulled together to support its businesses and its residents, was
I
unbelievable.
think consistency and longevity do have something to play with this as well. Like, just the schools. Mike Kyra's been there, Jim Adams, they've been there for a while. So we've been all working together for a while. It takes a while. You're not going to
it's really interesting. And I think like the financial policies, and everybody kind of focuses on the content, but I always tell people, when other towns are looking to copy them or something, the key is not necessarily the detail. The key was those signatures at the bottom,
right?
And having everybody agree to them when there's not an emergency going on, and cooler heads are prevailing, and that really kind of dictates when the stuff does hit the fan.
And when we did those, we were in a good place financially. Yeah.
Well, we were
right. We were on the upswing.
We were those policies. I think those policies. Those policies were the key to us being in the financial stuff. And I think some of the other things that we did administratively, like go over to the group insurance commission.
Oh, that was huge.
Some of the sustainability projects and everything.
Yeah. Becoming a green community, we brought grants in that helped us do things that were important to our community.
Yeah, so the sustainability initiatives, the fact that we have a sustainability manager.
Right.
And I think just about some of the services that we've added, obviously the human services aspect. So we have like a human services and prevention department, but we've also looked to enhance our services at the community, like at the senior center and even with recreation and things. And I think that's been really important because we talk a lot about the infrastructure, the community development type of stuff, but then there's also the people aspects of it. And I think key to that, and Beth, you've been really instrumental in these areas, is like the events and then also the communications piece. And I think those have really been critical in helping, generate that sense of community. So what was happening in the town before you got on board in terms of, I can tell you like communications, we had the directions, right? We would do an article each month.
Yeah, we had the directions, and that was where people received their information. I guess the other thing to think about is, and I know we're running short on time, is the idea that technology has also transformed what we do and how we do things, not only in Ashland, but across the state and across the country and across the world, right? Some of the apps that you can use to track things or to do things. Online bill pay, right? The fact that I don't have to take my check and bring it to town hall or put a stamp on it and mail it in, that I can just do that all online. That I can go online to the website and find out what's going on. That I can get these emails. I remember when my girls were little, sometimes they'd come home with a stack of flyers in their backpacks because that was how things were communicated out. So I think the communication, the newsletter that gets sent out, every time I talk to someone, they're like, yep, I read that the town manager's email. It's great to hear what's going on. And when people haven't been reading it, you point them to that. You point them to your newsletter, the economic development newsletter. All these ways of communicating out has transformed how we connect with our with the community.
We're doing a podcast.
Right.
Let's face it. 10 years ago, would we have said that?
That's a good point.
I think when I first got here, we had a Facebook page, but it was a personal page. You had to be a friend. You had to add me as a friend. Yeah. So that was the first thing we changed to have a business page. Yeah. And then we've added Instagram. We have LinkedIn.
And it's really active.
We've tried things. They haven't worked. But some things have stuck. That email newsletter is still, the direct email is still the best way to reach people.
It's amazing.
We have a great partnership with local town pages, so that's kind of stepped up. So they get a lot of our information as well. I think the communications for the town is really in a good place. I think the engagement is there. People are receiving it. We're getting a lot of feedback. We're always open to more feedback. Now we're doing the Clocktown Chronicles. So I do feel like we have to always keep up on that. And we're evolving as the town evolves. We are as well with communications. But we've come a long way.
And as technology evolves, right? Part of it, we didn't have some of this technology. You didn't have social media 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
So the fact that we're embracing this and using it and utilizing it to reach our public, I think is key.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity to put in a plug for WACA. Who's
Yes.
They're the
they always
best.
do
Yeah.
great.
We're so
great
lucky
work.
to have them here.
But yeah, I mean, Beth, you've looked at some other towns' social media pages, like their Facebook pages, and like ours is active, very active compared to a lot of others.
Yes, for sure.
Sometimes that's not a great thing. It depends
Got to
on
take the good with the bad.
depends on the post. It depends on how
And
it
I think
goes.
it connects residents to one another. I think it connects residents to us. I mean, that was always the intent, right? We always wanted them to feel like we're not, the government isn't
Right.
the big, bad, ugly
Right.
thing. Like, we're here to support them. We're here to help. And I feel like if we can communicate that to people, then we're doing our job well. But I also think that it connects our staff. I mean, going back to the staff, I think they feel, oh, I saw that going on in town. That's great. And they're actually coming to our events as
Right.
well.
Right.
So that's great too.
Right.
Nice.
And I think, so this is going to be a good opportunity to segue, I think, into some of the challenges in the future. And I'm going to start it from kind of a off the wall angle, but talking about the events, right? And I think, prior to 10 years ago, we had Ashland Day. And then did we have any other?
So there was Ashland Day there, and a lot of these were run by the Ashland Day Committee. There was the Ashland Day. There was the Halloween event, right? You'd meet at
the parade.
I mean, I remember when
Yeah.
you'd meet at Pitaway,
Yeah.
and then you'd walk around, and then you'd wind up at the Mendez.
Yeah.
They had the Ashland lighting. It wasn't as big. It wasn't as
Right.
involved as certainly what it has evolved into, but there were those little things that were there. Stone Park concerts have been going on for quite
Right.
a while.
Right.
They used to do movie nights. I remember grabbing
Oh,
my
that's
girls
right,
and
yeah.
going to the gazebo
Back to school
and
movie night.
having our dinner
Yeah.
and sitting there at Stone Park and watching a movie.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Underneath
It was in the pavilion,
Yeah,
yeah.
the
The pavilion at
Yeah.
Stone Park.
I forgot
And
about that.
I remember that, yeah.
so I think it was before your time. And then at some point that just they weren't getting us enough people, and certainly COVID killed all those kinds of things
Yeah.
because people weren't comfortable coming together. And I mean, people are still a little hesitant about certain things. So
And so now we have like Fall Fest, we have
Yeah.
Culture Fest, we have all kinds of fests.
Yeah.
We're a lot of festing.
Holiday stroll,
Holiday
We're festive
stroll,
people.
Dragonfly
festive.
Street Fair. Yeah.
But so Beth, I want to ask you, do you think, moving forward as we look forward, because these events are again, I don't think other communities do as many, but they're very, very staff intensive. And do you think we need to look at expanding the number of events moving forward? Do you think we need to look at rethinking some of the events, maybe combining them? I don't know. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, I think that we have the capacity we have, so we can only do what we can do. Obviously, it would be great to have more volunteers maybe helping out with events. But I think we've got a really good, solid base for events. I feel like we should always be kind of looking at other opportunities, maybe what seasons we're missing or what ones that have a really great turnout. And do we want to build on that, or do we want to do it again another time during the year? I kind of feel like the holiday stroll was so successful. That's where Dragonfly Street Fair has kind of emerged. And now we have a lot more vendors selling products. Supporting those local home-based businesses is part of, what I really love to do. So I feel like we should always be looking at opportunity, but I feel like we have a great base of events for this town and this community this size. And it's certainly more than what I've seen in others. So I'm proud
and
of
things
that.
have certainly evolved, right? I think about when the corner spot first started, the pop-up businesses, right?
Yeah.
There would be a business in there for a week or two.
Yeah.
And they tried that. You tried that for a couple of years, and then again, COVID sort of put a nix on that. And that hasn't really come back. But I think those businesses have found other ways to still promote their businesses and be in Ashland and connect with Ashland residents.
I still have hope that pop-up
Will come back.
still come back there. We need people downtown. We just
Yeah.
need people living
Yeah.
downtown.
Right? That's true. We need people who,
That's what's going to support that. But there's,
My favorite, the one you talk about evolving, is Halloween. The
trick or treat in town hall.
in town hall,
So, I mean, that started literally, like, Halloween fell on a Wednesday night one night, and I was like, you know what, let's go, I'm going to go get some candy, and, if the staff want to dress up or something. And now it's like
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty cool. And now the businesses around are
Yeah.
like starting to
Are
do it.
participating, yeah.
Yeah, last year it was so awesome because, you had a lot of the streetscape work done. And, I mean, the downtown was just packed.
Yeah.
You saw that flashing pedestrian light going all the time. I'm sure the people driving hated
I
it.
love
But
that. I think that's a testament to, again, our staff and our leadership.
Oh, they get into
where
it,
we
yeah.
just listen to the residents. Like
Yeah.
we listen to them, we hear them, we see what they want, and we make it happen.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I feel
Yeah.
like we do. That's my
Yeah.
opinion.
So when we were talking about events, you referred to capacity, and I'm kind of looking at some of these challenges that I had written down, and really they all, well, not all, but a lot of them come down to financial resources and capacity.
Yeah.
And so this year we had a $1.2 million deficit, and S&P, which is the bond rating company, and which is a real objective evaluator of our finances, they reaffirmed our AAA rating recently, but they did make mention of it. And actually, one of the reasons they still gave us the AAA was that longevity and that experienced,
great.
leadership that we have. But that's an issue because I think a couple of other things I had on this list was increased community expectations of local government. And large increase, we've had large increases in water and sewer and trash, and hiring and staffing challenges. A lot of it comes down to the financial piece. And I don't know, Yolanda, what do you think? So I was meeting with our comprehensive planning consultant today, and we were talking about some specific things and some larger themes. And so we boiled it down to this aspect to wants versus needs versus taxes. And that's kind of, I think, the decision that needs to be made. moving forward.
It's interesting you bring up the comprehensive plan, because I think the comprehensive plan is going to help us get input from the community, or at least that's our hope, right? That we get enough input from the community that they're gonna give us some guidance that says, we like what you're doing and we want you to continue and we're willing to pay for it. Or through the comprehensive plan, they're gonna say, you know what? We don't need some of these things and we want you to do, maybe it's we want you to do less because we're not willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
And you and I have had this discussion many times, right? That we can put things out there, but at some point, the community is going to have to decide, do they want to continue with some of these great things that we're doing? Because they do cost money, right? I mean, we have a lot of fun at the Corner Spot, but I bet if we looked at what your budget is and what you're spending there, yes, some of the businesses that come in are making money, but for a town, we are making this expenditure to bring our community together. And that is something that, as we look at our finances, the decision will have to be, okay, we want to continue this, but this is what we need in regards to the finances to be able to do that. And I think those are going to be some hard, tough discussions with the residents of Ashland. Do you like what we're doing? And if you do, we may need to ask you for more money to do it. It's pretty basic to me.
Yeah, I mean, Beth, you get kind of a ringside seat, just at kind of what the staff's currently doing and the pressures that they're under. But you're also a resident too, so you know what that tax impact is.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, what's your perspective on it?
I think we really have to decide what we want. And if we want to keep moving forward and we want nicer things, then that's just the way it is. I want to redo my kitchen.
Right.
I'm going to have to pay for that.
Right.
So I guess it does come down to that wants, needs, and taxes. But I think they all kind of go hand in hand.
They do. I mean, it's an equation, I guess, and they're all interrelated. And, I think it's going to be an important discussion. And I think, I will say nothing's been determined yet, but I don't think we're going to go in a direction for an override for FY26. I mean, I don't think we're at a place where
I think we need to have some of those tougher discussions.
Yeah.
I really do. I think we need to get the public engaged, and of course that goes back to other comments of how do we get the public engaged, right? It's something that was brought up in our discussion with the planning board, right? How do we get more communities to say yes or no to what they want and what they're willing to support?
I feel like if we do this look back and then we look at what we're currently doing, and once we wrap up those current projects, then we're really looking at like, okay, then what's next? And that's our opportunity to really say, are we going to step it up and pull through to what we really want and put the money where we want it to go? Or I think that will be the deciding factor, I think.
Yeah. Because I think, we can all agree that, the pace that we're currently on and we've been on with the resources that we have is unsustainable. And, again, I think we're just going to have to, it's going to be a community conversation.
Yes.
And I think it's a tough one because it's about dollars and cents, but it's also about values. And it's also about what's important to us. And, people have always asked me, like, and I don't say this a lot. Maybe I shouldn't say it right now. I will anyway. I've kind of put it out there. But, people, what's your goal, right? What am I looking to accomplish here? Is it, was it to build a public safety building or anything? No. I mean, all that stuff is great, and I think it's part of it. But and I think I explained this on Friday when we had kind of our staff meeting, which is, the goal is to help everybody understand that if you want to achieve or you want to get to a certain level and you want to do certain things, like you have to pay a price. That's just a universal law, like cause and effect.
I think it's one of those things where it's like you need a purse, right? Here, this is a very simple basic. You need a purse.
Michael doesn't.
He'll understand. Or let's put it this way. You need a car. Okay? You need a car.
Okay,
and like I have a dream car.
Yeah. What's your dream car, Yolanda?
It's some kind of convertible.
Oh, okay.
Okay. If I've always wanted a convertible. But I have to then go, okay, I want a convertible, but is that practical for me? And then can I afford that? Or do I stick with, I have my 8-year-old Toyota Highlander that still drives well that I probably won't replace for a couple of years because financially that's where I'm at, that I need to do that. And I think as a community, that's part of our discussion, right? Is we can have that dream community that we want, but we then have to decide, 1, are we going to pay for that? And 2, can we pay for that? And 3, do we want to pay for that? And that might be a very basic way of putting it, but I mean, I think that's really what our community conversation has to be. What to your point, what do we want our community to be? Do we want to pay for that? But then the other part is, can we afford to pay that? And can our residents afford to pay that? And
I think so, and there's another level of question that we need to ask to that, which is what's important to you. So when you talk about we'll use your convertible analogy, what's important to you?
It's not that important to me, right? So right now, I mean, it might be in the future. I mean, it's something I've thought about. It's, I've thought about driving a convertible at some point, but it hasn't been important enough to me to either save the money or borrow the money to do that.
So having a convertible is not what you want. It's a feeling that you want.
Yeah.
The wind blowing.
Exactly.
But yeah, for sure.
So if that's the feeling that I want, how do I really get to that, right? And
there could be other ways. You could ride in my Jeep with the top down. So, which is
or in a friend's convertible.
Exactly. There's several different ways to skin a cat.
Getting to the consensus of what everyone wants. That's the hard part.
I think it's not what everybody wants, but it's what's important. And there's going to be different. Yeah. But is there going to be able to triangulate that into something that is consensus? And so the other part of what my answer is understanding that there's a price that has to be paid. It doesn't always have to be with money, but there is a price. There's a sacrifice. And then the second thing, which is just as important, is Ashland is worth that investment. And I think we have the team in place that can find ways to take care of those that are most vulnerable from a financial perspective. I don't know. It's a long conversation and a community conversation. But And so we will take this out to the community, but unfortunately, we have to end our part of the conversation right here. So I think this has been great. We only covered a half of what we had intended, but that's usually the way things go. I think we were able to hit the high marks and prioritize some important things. Yolanda and Beth, I'm going to ask you just to close up. What do you think is the most important thing we have to think of moving forward?
That we're going to have challenges, that our finances are going to go up and down, and we need to move forward as a community and get as much input and involvement from as many people as possible to make sure that it's the Ashland that it's not going to be everybody, but that the majority of people want to continue living in.
Yeah. And what about you, Beth?
Yeah, I think Ashland is a great place to live. It's a great place to work. It's a great place to play. I mean, really, to hike and to swim. And I mean, there's so many great things. And I feel like as long as we are keeping the conversation open and we're engaging people, I do feel like we are going to get there eventually. We just sort of have to keep plugging along. And I think as long as everyone is patient and respectful, then I think that we will certainly get there for sure. I mean, I think it's already a great place to live.
And willing to put their ideas and comments forward and have the discussion.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I told you this was going to be painless, maybe even a little bit of fun. I hope you enjoyed it. It's been great having you on.
It was great.
Well, you know what? Anytime we get to talk about Ashland and our community,
That's
it's a fun
true.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you picked a
absolutely.
good two to help you with that one.
For sure. That could have been part of the calculation. But again, thank you both for being here and spending so much time. I'm not going to tell you how much time we spent until afterwards. But
Okay, great.
this has been awesome. Just thank you, Paul and WACA and Barbara. Thank you all for putting this together and helping us produce these. For our listeners out there, if you've made it with us this far, thank you for listening. This is episode 5 of Clocktown Chronicles. You can find this on YouTube under WACA, and it's also available on Spotify and Apple Music, I believe. And if you have any comments or you have any suggestions about what you'd like to hear /see, just write to me, mherbert@ashlandmass.com, and we'll see if we can accommodate that. But this has been a great show. Thank you both for being here, and thank you all for listening.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. Have a good day, everyone.